start my stream here. And I should be looking at, excellent. Hey, well, hello, good afternoon to you. Welcome to Tottnam Hotspur, USA, DJ Paul. I have been searching around, trying to get the best setting. If your first time in the chat, welcome. I'm going to continue to do these quick chats. So, welcome to Tottnam Hotspur, USA. I am DJ Paul, and today I have a potpourri of things to do on this test broadcast. I know that, you know, unknown channel, but not an unknown um, streamer or participating in the chat and the discourse as far as Spurs are concerned. And so, right now, just looking at the landscape, just looking at what is transpiring out there in the world of Tottenham Hotspurs. One of the things, good morning, welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, good afternoon, wherever you're listening from. Thank you for coming in. Yo, to you. I'm DJ Paul. If you are here for the first time, yes, I am here for the third time, trying to get this channel up and going, trying to stay on the other side of the marsh, the mush pit. Um, just so you know, just for introduction, I am not sentimental at all. I try not to be in terms of what I intend to talk about. I have right now on my notepad a few things that I would love to get off my chest and then take it from there. So the the conversations as they are keeps dragging us back into the same topics. You know, after every game, before every game, you get into the same dialogue. You know, what is it that we are about? One of the things that piqued my interest. Excuse me just for 1 second. Let me get this door closed. I'm actually in a room that is not for broadcast, but let me get the noise out before. Yeah, get my headphones back in. Yeah, sorry about that. I could have gone with my wireless mic. That would have helped. um, yes. So the conversation that I want to have is strictly about football. And even as I subscribe to many of the major channels on here, uh, every one of us started out and think we can be different. Welcome to the broadcast. Um, we always think that we can be different. We have something different to offer. And even though I've done a lot of short videos, if you go to DJ Paul Lawrence, I think 9993, or even subscribing to the Rude Boy Sound, you could see those videos. What I try to do is stay with a particular topic. And in my preparation for today, I just kept on writing and writing and writing and writing. And I have actually 15 points that we tend to circulate, regurgitate around every single day. And having listened to my fair portion of Spurs content and content creators, what I probably will not do is actually invoke any name here, unless they're in the chat. We can talk about that. What I'm trying to do here is look at certain things, and one of the items that I have here, which I think is important, and I can stake my position out as it relates to Thomas Frank. It's funny I do not have Thomas Frank in here. I just have managers. And the reason why that is important is that it doesn't matter who the manager is. We tend to go back to if it's going great, then we always look for something and someone to blame or to give the credit to. That was the case with Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy, if he buys a player and the player is doing well, then he gets, the manager usually gets credit for that. And so we tend to work from two different sides of the ledger. And as we go through, one of the things that I saw yesterday, and I keep saying it, you know that the better teams, there is less that is being said about their back room. Because if the back room is functioning, then the actual product on the field is going to be better. And therefore, if they're doing their jobs, there's absolutely no need to talk about them, because we only talk about them when we see the success, and we drag them through the mud when things are not going the way they're supposed to. That's the only time we care. No one cares about the chairman. No one cares about the scout, the director of football, when everything is going great, because that is what we come to expect. And if you look at Spurs as we are, we talk more about the chairman, the board, the ownership, because things are not going the way we want it to go. And so we have that problem. So if we talk about that today, and we go out and we lose a game just the way we did to Aston Villa, then it is not so much so the performance. We're not looking to see whether or not we could have done something different. The manager could have done something different. His tactics did not work. We regurgitate the same thing, is that the back room is crap. And so we tend to do that. Not tend, we actually do that on a daily basis. And so in my attempt is try to get to the point where you get to the Sky Sports kind of view, where you can actually introduce talking about the actual football. I know it's very, very difficult, because if we have a discussion and we're not talking about whether or not Romero is a world-class center back, then the conversation is like blah, because analyzing Ramiro for what he does would mean that we start talking about whether or not he can, he would have been in the Arsenal team or the United team or whatever team are supposed to be the bigger clubs, whether or not United would have had him, whether it would have been better, whether Real Madrid would have come for him, or Atletico Madrid or Barcelona. So we measure every single player by the standard of what all the big clubs are. And so we take that conversation there. So looking at a game that we just completed, and we see what the problem is. The problem is that we're just not good in the center of the park. And that's the problem. The problem is not whether or not Romero is a world-class defender. The problem is not whether or not, Dragoshin needs time, or Danzo. That's not the problem. The problem is we have Ben Davis, who has been here since Pochettino, and we don't have the quality. The problem is we have not, I don't like to use the word replaced, because when you talk about Ericsson has a lot of success. And so talking to the Pochettino era, which a lot of the young fans, and I'm going to talk about talking past this generation that we tend to be doing, is that when you talk about Pochettino, the playmaker would have been Del Alli and Ericsson. What we tend to do is that we look at the squad. I would say, we never replaced Del Alli. We don't need to replace Del Alli. Del Alli played himself down the tubes even when he was at Spurs. So if you want to be reasonable, and we look at Del Alli's um, time at Spurs, he has his heights and then he dipped, and it was time for him to find greener pasture. It is not like a Garrett Bale or a Modric or a Berbatov or even Sol Campbell. If we are to be real, I know we don't like the idea of talking about Sol Campbell, but we're talking about players who were on top of their game when they leave Spurs. So if Ericsson left Spurs, he was not on top of his game. He was coming to an end. And so what we're replacing, or we said to have not replaced, is a Del Alli, but Del Alli was on his way down for whatever happened with his career. And so when we look at it and we talk about Del Alli at the height of his pump, when he was the man playing, deeper, to me as a number 8, kind of box to box, and he was just rambunctious and he could do anything with the world at his feet. But Del Alli leaves Spurs not that same player that he came in as. So there was decline in Del Alli. So when we're talking about not replacing Del Alli, right? Not when we talk about not replacing Christian Eriksen, we did with James Maddison. Just so happened that those two players who did what was needed at the time, we have a replacement. So like I'm saying is that regurgitating that kind of conversation don't lead us anywhere, because we're not analyzing the player and when they left. But we talk about Dembele. If I myself might get back to it, just to make a point, when it comes to the football, we get sentimental so much about the players that we have 5 players over a period of time that left Spurs at their pump. We can go back to Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker left Spurs when he was at his pump. Danny Rose was on the decline, injured prone. So when we start talking about not replacing Danny Rose, we did not sell Danny Rose when Danny Rose, or get rid of Danny Rose when Danny Rose was as it pump. We did that with Kyle Walker. We did that with Bale. We did that with Modric. So when you're talking about a replacement, even the great Dembele that we wax lyrically about, he was on his way out in terms of what he was contributing at the time. And so we want to replace a Dembele who, when he was in his second or third year, that's the Dembele that we wanted to replace. And that's what we talk about. And if I might go through the entire roster, there was no other player. Vertonghen played out his usefulness and his value. But when it was time for him to go, he had maxed out. Toby, the same thing. They all were maxed out. It is not like we get rid of those players at their pump. Again, we're not talking about Bale and Modric and Berbatov and Sol Campbell. Well, Sol Campbell is a different animal when it comes to that kind of discussion. Even if I might go to the manager, he made mistakes. And we have to live with the fact that we'll never know whether or not, if he had started Lucas Moura, what would have happened in that Champions League. He started a Kane who looked like he was walking in iron boots. And so we suffer that, but yet we romance and want to see Pochettino again. Just touching on him, Pochettino has not improved tactically as a manager. Great man, good man management can put an 11 out there. And over the years, I've watched Pochettino. When it gets to the 76th minute, the 88th minute, I hardly have seen him said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do tactically. What Pochettino did was that he won with his system, just the way Ange won with his system. Their system are going to overcome you tactically. They're not verse. Pochettino is not tactically verse. So when people are saying go out there and go get Pochettino is not going to do much with this squad. There's no pixie dust. This squad, if we go hypothetical and take him out of the situation that he's in right now and say, okay, he's not with the US team, right? Let's go out and get rid of Frank. right now in January. Bring Pochettino in. What has Pochettino done for you to say he can turn this lot with the injuries, with the substandard players that we have, this squad that we have? The board hasn't signed anyone. What is it in Pochettino's career that you can say Pochettino will be able to turn this around? It has not proven anywhere that he can. He went to PSG. What was the argument when he was at Spurs? He was not backed. He did not have the money. The board did not back him. But we forget that Pochettino was the program. We forget that Pochettino was the project. Pochettino wanted who he wanted until he realized that you got to step up in class. The academy was not going to do it, and the cheap buys were never going to do it once you became a top 4 team. It was never going to happen because the quality and the caliber of players needed to step up, and we did not do that. That is because Pochettino was a part of a project with Daniel Levy and the board, and this is what he sold. So it's very difficult after making the Champions League to now rewrite the entire script. We thought we could have been successful after chasing down Leicester with what we had. And don't forget, the players we're celebrating today, right? Those same players, when I look back over it, they span more than one season. When you look at the team that went to the Champions League, I know that there were not enough signings that happened with it. But if you look at the players that were there, those players actually played more than one season together. And that is why they were so good when we get with the fight to the Champions League. Llorente made a difference with the experience that he had. So the sentiments and the revisionist history is what we keep doing every day. And I don't see, let me get off Poch. I don't see Poch coming in and making a difference to what's happening. Not with this squad. And so what we're actually asking, not Poching directly, what we're asking in this iteration of our disgruntlement is to say, let's get rid of this manager because things are not going the way we want it to be. And then what we're going to do with this window. That's just my question. When you get rid of this manager, what are you, and you're going to go out and get Pochettino, what does the logic say? That sit on what you have, don't buy any players. We have injuries, right? Solanke came back yesterday, which was good. Good to see that. So what else do? You still need a playmaker. Do you now say if there's an available playmaker, because you don't trust Frank or what Frank is doing, you're going to give up, say, getting a Conor Gallagher? I don't want to hear the whole Chelsea thing, right? That's not fruitful at all. What Conor Gallagher is a darn good footballer. What Conor Gallagher is someone who can take this team and run this team, make Javi Simons much better because Gallagher is a dominant football player. He dominates the ball. And if he dominates the ball just the way Kudus dominates the ball, but in a different way, what it allows the other players to do is find themselves in the position. It would so happen that you'd now have someone, a playmaker, in the middle of the park, like say a Dembele was. We love to talk about Dembele and Wanyama, more Dembele than anything. Conor Gallagher is a darn good footballer. But for us, we think because he's Chelsea and we can see the value that he brings. He went to West Ham or Palace or wherever he was, and you saw him even at 21, 22, the kind of player that he is. He has not changed. I know he wanted to play more at Atletico. And this is a time that you go and get a Conor Gallagher when he's disgruntled. Because what's going to happen is that if you wait for Conor Gallagher for the summer, you're going to have too many suitors for him. And as we know, is that once you start having more suitors, take for example, let me just do this as an example. If we had gone after Semenyo with everything that we had before he re-signed, chances are we could have gotten Semenyo. If you look at how Bournemouth treated Semenyo, I can say this. The expectation that Semenyo was going to be who he turned out to be, I am surprised that the language and the clause that Bournemouth puts in his contract was some confidence that this guy is going to be a star. He re-signed in the summer. And when you look at it, who re-signed a player with much confidence that you're going to build your club around him because he's going to be your best player, and you put a clause in there where he's going to get released 6 months from now? You get what I'm saying? So with Bournemouth putting that kind of clause in there, and he start to perform, what happens is that in the summer, obviously, Arsenal did not have a need for him because they have Madueke. City didn't have a need for him. Liverpool did not have a need for him. But when but Spurs have a need for him. We did not push the boat out enough before he signed that contract. That is when you according to some, you overpay. You overpay in that respect for him before he re-signed, because what's going to happen, and what happened, is that when that clause kick in, everyone is on the same playing field. What is going to happen is that Spurs are on the bottom of the totem pole. We're about 6th or 7th. So if Liverpool is coming in, if Arsenal is coming in, even though we might say, well, they have Martinelli and they have Trossard, who cares? They're going to buy him if they think they need him. And what will happen as well is that I think, just like the Nketiah deal, where Nketiah would just walk right into Spurs' team at any one of the position, even ahead of Van de Ven, in my opinion, Nketiah chose to go to Arsenal on a deal and sat on the bench until there were injuries. So you have to look at the reality of what Spurs are. And I keep using this word. We are not attractive. We are just not an attractive club. We are supposed to be a big club, but we are just not an attractive club from the aspect of football. And so it doesn't matter right now what manager comes. No player is going to come to Spurs just because Pochettino walked through the door. We have to have something to offer. We have to be able to offer them stability. And so when you get to players like Dragushin or Dragushin, I might mess up the pronunciation there, and even Van de Ven, who is going to tell you that they want to go. Their heads have been turned. They're on the second tier. And they have been on the second tier from we were pursuing them. And so for even Van de Ven, and I hate to bring this up, because this is the world of football. Van de Ven, right now as it is, have been injured prone throughout his career, just to touch Van de Ven as it is. So this is what we're dealing with. He has been injury prone. We don't want to talk about that. What we talk about is the runs that he made, right? Is the way he's playing now. But the way he's playing now, he's just playing on the first and giving us something on his rookie contract, as we say in the States. Van de Ven missed the equivalent of a full season under Ange. Van de Ven has missed 42 games over the period of 2 years that Ange was here. So he's on a good run, and the first thing being on a good run is that qualifies him for us to according to everyone to sign him to make sure that our interest is protected. How about he plays and shows that he can be healthy? I understand the need to protect your asset, but you still have 3-4 years to go, and furthermore, the first 2 years you gave us half a service. So now that Van de Ven is healthy, everyone forgot that Van de Ven missed 42 games under Ange. How we forget those? Because we spend a lot of time talking about all the other things. I hear some people are saying Vuskovic, We need to sign Vuskovic to a longer contract. Why do we need to do that? If we're doing the right thing with him, if we give him a professional contract and said we sign you for 4 years, and he come in and assess the club, which I think was a very smart thing to do, and said, look, when I look around, I see myself playing anywhere between 7 or 8 games, unless there is horrific injuries coming out of camp, or within the first, and I'm not willing to take that chance. And the club sat down with him, which I think was a smart thing, and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to send you out on loan. This is not an opinion of mine. These are the facts. When the facts comes out, you have to be able to deal with the facts. But now that when we're having issues at the back, all of a sudden he's scoring goals. But I watched him. He has a lot to learn, and it takes time. Saliba didn't get to where he is at 19 when we tried to sign him. Arsenal signed him and sent him out on loan. No one was talking about bringing back Saliba when Arsenal was struggling. So if you send your players out on loan, all of a sudden we have to bring back all our players. Let's go bring back Mikey Moore. Let's go bring back Alfie Devine and Dorrington. That's the mentality of a losing club. If you want to develop the player, let him stay, let him develop. Yes, maybe he would come in. Look at Dane Scarlett. Dane Scarlett has been on 4 loans. And Dane Scarlett cannot make it into this first team with all the injuries and with the play of Muani and Richarlison. And Dane Scarlett is supposed to be a blue chipper. But that's how we roll. We get into the personal side of things rather than looking at the football itself. Where was I? Yeah, so part of this 15-point thing that I'm looking at, there's a segment which I would probably roll into one. There's a segment of our community that believes that they should have some form of monopoly, being the arbiter of what Spurs are supposed to be. And I don't really care. I'm independent. And when it comes to the conversation before, I know Daniel Levy is gone and we don't want to discuss Daniel Levy. So now what we do is that Levy is gone, and that's a scapegoat for everything. We know nothing, so we say a lot, and hopefully we'll get it right. We don't know what was happening behind the scene with Daniel Levy, and now we do know. No one is talking about that $100 million that Enoch said was destined to the club, because we start to speculate and give our own opinion about what that $100 million was going to be. And if you count it, it moves from 100 million to 132 because we just sold Brennan Johnson. And so if we have that kind of cachet and we are not bringing in any players, there's something fundamentally wrong with what's happening at the back. And I understand that, and it's frustrating to know that your club is not moving in a way that is putting the football first. And so I will give Daniel Levy his flowers, move on. I don't know everything and anything that happens behind the scene, because one of the things that I understand, I use the eye test, is that if Daniel Levy was on the out in the summer, and you tie that into the old Ange scenario, and I'm going to sort of back up on how harsh I was with Ange if we just look at things based on what is happening now. So if Daniel Levy, chairman in charge, you have Charrington coming in, you have Vinay coming in, right? Paratici was still hanging around. Lange, which I think is useless, is still there. Mackenzie, I have no idea what he does. So you have all the players there, and then in the behind the scene, you have Lewis and his adult kids, right? And so when you look at it, what do we know about Daniel Levy? That he's a chairman and he is a miser. And we call Daniel Levy all kinds of names, not knowing the functionality of what's happening behind the scene. And so what we see is a product, the end product of what Daniel Levy does. And so we can look at the club from that perspective. Fair point. Fair enough for everyone and anyone. That's what he gives you. That's what you saw. And that's how you're going to judge him. So if Daniel Levy, I'm getting to the point. So if Daniel Levy was on the out, you're talking a person who has, I think, 29.4% of the share of the ownership. And within winning the Europa with Ange, Daniel Levy was going to leave the club. This is not like a manager who you can decide tomorrow that, you know what, I'm not happy with the manager, so I'm going to fire the manager. It doesn't work like that from a board level. There has to be votes. There has to be some form of notification. You don't just walk in and say, I'm finished with the manager, off with your head. Or, you know, as we do with manager, the same with a shareholder. So someone knew, or everyone knew, that Daniel Levy at some point during the summer was not going to be here. What did we do? Daniel Levy was the one who was in charge of the recruitment and the signing, the firing of Ange. So it was business as usual. Ange through the door, winning a trophy, and I said I'm going to talk about that with, you know, my revisionist history and the way I look at it. Ange through the door, and in comes Frank. And the move that Daniel Levy made, that in itself, to what's out there in the public, cost us somewhere in the region of $16 to $17 million to, you know, for the movements to get Frank and paying off Ange to you know, for that change. Why in the world was going to not be there? Was he the one who was still doing the club's business? Dysfunction. And so what we got with Frank is that Frank has not gotten anything that the 4 previous managers didn't. He got exactly what they get: a poor team, poor selection, poor buys. Because the board is dysfunctional. And by the board being dysfunctional, we can't go out there and get the quality that we need. We don't know who is leading what, or who is leading who, or who is in charge. Because now we can go back and said, put 2 and 2 together and said, was Daniel Levy really in charge of how the money was spent, when the money was spent, and on whom the money should be spent? We can go back and we can look at that and decipher for ourselves. But that's enough for Daniel Levy. When it comes to managers, for me, it doesn't matter who the manager is. My first inclination is to back that manager. I am not going to go off and said, I'm not going to back the manager. That's my first inclination, is to back the manager. Always. The manager now has to show me and give me a reason not to back him anymore. Ange did. And it took me a while before I'll say, hey, I don't think this is working out. So, in my opinion, Frank has not gotten enough time, and I'm looking at him from a strategic and a tactical point. With the players that he inherited from a dysfunctional backroom, does he have the presence? Is he actually in charge? Does his tactics work? Does his team selections work? Does injuries affect what he's doing to the point wherein we're not seeing performances that we need to be seen. Those are the things that I'm looking at. And I'm beginning to feel like Frank has been spooked. And some of the chopping and changing that I'm seeing is a man that is trying to get it right with less quality. And we really don't have a lot of quality in the squad to lean on right now. We really don't have a lot of quality that we can point to. And so it brings me back to some of our fans. When we look out there and we see a Conor Gallagher available, if we can get Conor Gallagher, the caliber of Conor Gallagher, for anywhere between 30 and 35 million, that's a steal right there. Because what he's going to offer you, what he's going to do for Javis Simmons' game, if you understand football, right, is that when you have someone who can dominate the ball with purpose, I mentioned Kudus before. Kudus dominates the ball, but he doesn't dominate the ball with purpose. He dribbles a lot. He doesn't pass progressively, but he's talented. And our fans love that. We jump yay and we cheer yay. And just a quick thing, it's not a matter of whether or not I actually like Brennan Johnson. It's whether or not Brennan Johnson would have suited us with Kudus on the other side of the pitch. The propensity that Brennan Johnson has for scoring goals mean that it would have been better for us if Kudus was moved inside or to the other side and put Brennan Johnson as a right winger, because that's the only place he can play. He doesn't play it well. He has so many faults that it's hard. It's a hard watch, very, very difficult watch. But what he's going to give you is the instinct to know where the goal is. He is one of those players who plays within the framework of the goal. If we look at some of Kudus's run, we can bury this conversation real fast. If you look at some of the breakaway that Kudus generates and ball that plays through to him, and him supposed to be eating up grass, he cuts the ball back all the time. He beats his man again, and beat him again. And sometimes the balls end up back with Vicario, because Kudus is busy showing off something that he has. He just has it. He has the it thing, as they say. We don't know what it is. He just that he has that. He's a baller, and so we don't need you to prove to us every day that you're a baller. What we need you to do is to make those around you an extension of that skill. In comes Conor Gallagher. If you have a Conor Gallagher playing next to a João Palhinha who is going to express himself with the way he plays, he's going to be a beast. He's going to tackle. He's going to win the ball back. When you win the ball back, you give it to Conor Gallagher. Harry Winks looks like a world beater. Harry Winks looks like Modric, because when you get the ball, he gives it to Dembele. And so if you look at football through those eyes, then you will see that if you have a Conor Gallagher or a Ruben Neves or a Joe Gomez in this team, then you have some ball players that will offset the things that you're lacking, the quality that you're lacking, because one player is going to make that difference. Because what we'll be able to do is retain the ball. With Conor Gallagher, you'll be able to retain that ball. What will happen is that when you're retaining the ball, Simmons, who will have less of it, will have more to do with less, and then his skill level will rise. He will get more time to read the game and see what needs to get done. But if you are going to use Simmons as an outlet and he's not ready, as you see, and what he has to do to get up to speed, then you're not doing much for him. The reliance is the same thing with young players. And so when you look at everything from a football perspective, then you will have to appreciate what quality does. If you're going to ask an Archie Gray and a Bergval to be the ones who are going to carry your team forward. This is what you're going to have. Maybe that would have worked for Ange the way he plays, because his tactic is one way. Play them high, play them fast, press them, hope we outscore the team, and doesn't matter what happens behind you. You can survive in that if that's your objective. But if you're looking at it from a pure football standpoint, having a Conor Gallagher gets everyone in place, just the way James Maddison gets everyone in place. And so if you look at football and not personality, and if we spend more time understanding what should happen on the pitch, then you could judge the manager. Does the manager have what he needs in order to progress the team? No, he doesn't in this instance. If you look at Richarlison and look at Solanke, you'd rather have a Solanke than a Richarlison. If you look at a Archie Gray and a Bergvall and a Sarr, you'd rather have a James Maddison. James Maddison can't tackle for nothing, but if you have Palhinha next to him, then James Maddison doesn't have to do anything. All the good teams plays with two effective midfielders, whether they're two sixes or a 6 and an 8. And what we're missing here with the whole Javi Simons and James Maddison thing is that if we had a healthy James Maddison, we would not have had a Simons, in my opinion. But what we're doing as fans, and we get into this, I'm not sure if it's a generation. I try to make that point, but then when I listen and then when I watch, I realize that it is not generational. That we tend to talk less about the football and more about the personality. And no player is ever good enough for us. The older, fans like myself, I'm 50 years in to rooting for Spurs. So there's a lot that I've seen. And if I'm saying, let's look at football from the perspective of what it is, and you said, okay, can I go out there and get a Conor Gallagher to stabilize this team? A lot of our fans are saying, no, he's a Chelsea player. Oh, this player rooted for Arsenal. Oh, that one, Eza doesn't want to come because he likes Arsenal. No, if we are attractive and we have something to offer him at the right time, then players will come. We're just not an attractive club. And so it's not a matter of whether or not players are going to root for a team when they're 8 years old, or they want to go to another team when they were with some other team. That's how we react. Time and time again, that's how we react. We don't want Conor Gallagher because he was a Chelsea player. We don't want to go get Conor Gallagher because we don't do business with Chelsea. Jose coached Chelsea. What's the difference? Anyway, so the manager right now for me is I'm not going to even entertain the Frank out right now. I have not seen enough via players' performance and that he could have done, or any manager could have done any better with this squad, right? And there's a point I want to make here. I might be what they said, flailing in the wind, and I'm gonna skip the whole Romero conversation. I had the Romero conversation, and thank you for anyone that's in the chat. I appreciate you hanging in. Let me know. You can agree or disagree with me. I will definitely read it and I will respond to it. But this is actually, like I said, it's a test broadcast. I've been having some issues with the stream, and so I'm trying to do a sort of beta on it. I don't know if I have to change my software or what I have to do to get to where I need to, or computer, but there is something that I have to figure out. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to talk a bit of Tottnam Hotspurs, and this is just a potpourri of things that I've jotted down today. And one of the things that I'm going to throw out there is, and this is one of my 8 points, right? And it said sentimental. And I think I made that clear that I'm not a sentimental guy. I am not going to say that if Van de Ven wants to go to Real Madrid because he's healthy for 20 games, right, is that I'm going to shed a tear for him. If tomorrow the club decided that they're going to fire Frank, I would not shed a tear. I gave my support to him because of my expectations. What may happen next week, looking at him, I might look at it and say, well, in my opinion, he has not fulfilled this. My expectations was that with his tactical nous and how he plays the game, how I saw him at Brentford, then I expect him to solve this problem. One of the things that I talked about on a previous video was that when you look at the wing position and the left wing and the right wing, I've said that I would have preferred if Kudus have played over there to solve the left wing problem, because Kudus would have been good right, center, or left. He could have solved that problem, right? In my opinion. I look at the fullback, the two fullback positions as the same thing. Bless Porro. I don't see what most fans see, and so when I hear that Porro is trash, I don't see it, and maybe I need my eyes or my whole football mentality check. And here's what I'm saying. If he's not getting any help from, the manager making a conscious effort, and this is one of the things that I love Pochettino for this, because he used to do it with Kyle Walker. He used to slide Dembele or a Wanyama or wings towards Walker, but when he and Rose used to go up, to make sure that you have coverage, at the back, that your wing is not being overly exposed. We all know that invoke Frank in this line of thinking. When you have a weak defender like Porro, he's going to go forward. That's part of your game as a fullback, or in this case, he was a wingback. Doesn't really matter to me what he is. Yeah, I think, my thing has been bouncing up and down. So these are the things that and I apologize. These are the things that I'm trying to work out to make sure that the stream stabilize, and then I can work out the technical pieces of what's going on, and then we'll figure it out. And I'm going on. I'm going to stop on the hour mark, if I may. But what I'm saying is that we're not giving Porro enough help. And every team knows that, just the way every team knows that if we give Spurs the ball on the edge, we can counterattack them, because they play so high and they cannot resist us when we counterattack. If we set up in blocks of 4 and 5, then we will stymie their attack, because they attack with 8, 9, and sometimes 10, to be honest with you. And so when teams figure that out, right? When the manager on the other side figure that out, it is up to the manager on this side to figure out that you have been figured out. And it seemed like Frank, part of my criticism is that he has not figured out that Porro needs help. Well, if you don't want to give your fullback help, then you change him, right? I can understand when Dragoshin, sounds funny to me because I always call him Dragoshin. When Dragoshin was out, right, you have a fit Danzo, so you have enough help right there. Here's my problem with that tactically. Archie Gray can cover all the positions on the back line, so you have some insurance, right? Archie Gray was not playing in the midfield. You have problems at your right back. And I'm talking from a coach's standpoint. I'm talking as a coach now. If Danzo is healthy, Ramirez is healthy, Van de Ven is healthy, Jed Spence is a better defender than Porro is. Udogie is injured, so therefore you're going to move Spence to the left, right? Follow me on this. These are the things that I think Frank is not paying attention to when it comes on to making or taking the best of the worst and try to plug a situation. And this is not about chopping and changing because Porro played just about every game. It is at the point now where with Udogie being injured, right? If he wasn't, are you telling me that Jed Spence would not be playing as a right back? Because he would have been playing Porro. Let that sink in for a minute. If you use Danzo, who's always been sitting on the bench, push Van de Ven out as the fullback or the winger, that will solve your problem with Porro as a poor defender. Because when you do that, right, you have Archie Gray, who's still developing, as your backup to your central defensive position. And when you get a chance, he can play in the midfield. What you're going to do is put him on the field so he can continue to develop, right? So if you move Van de Ven out, right, because you're playing with a flat back four, bring Danzo in as a left-sided defender, or when Ben Davis gets healthy, you can play Van de Ven inside or outside. So, but what you're going to do is solve that problem with healthy body. Since all those players are healthy, he has not done it. So if I'm sitting here and I'm seeing that, that is where I go sour with the manager. Because now that you have Spence and you have Porro, healthy Davis, healthy Dragushin, healthy Danzo, healthy Mickey Van de Ven. That's 4 players for one position. Why not move Spence over to the right-hand side and sit Porro? It's begging out. Begging, it's begging. Begging out. It's begging. It's begging. It's screaming out. It's screaming out for that solution. And that is where my coach's cap comes on. You know, that I have my full complement of backs. Full complements of backs. Danzo, Dragoshin, Ben Davis. Right? And Spence, with a backup in Archie Gray. Why would I continue to play Porro on the right when I have a better defender who is playing out of position in Jed Spence? Why not just move Jed Spence to the right and then you try to solve the problem with one of 4 defenders that you have? Even if, say, Romero gets injured, you still have enough. Because it's either going to be Ben Davis, because now you can shuffle the cards or shuffle the deck. You can now move back Van de Ven into his proper position, jump, Ben Davis, to the fullback position and bring, say, Danzo or Dragoshin to play on the right-hand side. So he has the solution. He's just not using it. And so what I'm saying in some of these chats and when I'm talking, that is my version of talking football. That is football right there. That has nothing to do with Daniel Levy. That has nothing to do with the back room. That has nothing to do with whether or not Javis Simmons is good enough or we don't have a left winger. That has nothing to do with Brennan Johnson or Kudus or anyone. That's a position that the manager should look at and say, how do I solve this problem in a closed window? It doesn't matter if Odebeer is good enough or Tell is good enough. That is not the problem that you're trying to solve. We are talking about it, obviously, because we love to have these long discussions about who is good enough and who would have made what team. But we don't love to talk about football because it's too difficult. No, it's not. If we want to talk about football, that's your solution. That's not chopping and changing. That is recognizing that you have a problem and you use your personnel in a closed window to solve it until you can go out there and get a left back or a fullback. You play Spence at the right fullback and let the left back position be the position that becomes fluent. because now you have 4 people who you can put there, or at least you have 2. He has more than enough. We have seen Van de Ven playing for the national team, and Van de Ven plays as a wingback or a fullback. Sometimes when they split to 3, he's the man who is going to provide the width or play on the inside. And so if he's watching the national team, and that's another thing again, if you're watching the national team and you send your players out there and they say, wow, I did not notice that from what I am doing. How about I copy that? That's a learning manager. Before I started coaching, I used to leave work, and Santos was the team. I didn't root for Santos. I root for Cavaliers, but Santos was right next to me, and before I started coaching, get into coaching, leaving work every day I have to pass the training ground, and I used to just stand there. Half the things I couldn't hear because the team was so far away, and I would stand there and watch the coach, watch him, and watch what he's asking for, and interpret that to be what it is. That's no different from scouting. And if Frank is looking at a solution for his left back position with an injured Udogie, an inconsistent Udogie, he has a solution. At least he has something he could try. And that is moving Van de Ven there because he has enough. Right now, he has enough. He has a disgruntled Dragoshin who can play on the left-hand side. He can play with Romero. You have Ben Davis, who is naturally a left-sided player, who you can play there, but he insisting on playing Spence, who cannot put the ball over on his left foot. So what he does, he's cutting inside. He's mudding up the play when he goes forward. And something I notice about Jed Spence does not drive the ball with the same intensity that he does when he's on the left-hand side. There's a disconnect there. For coming off his natural side, he doesn't drive the ball and get into that, towards the D or close to the, cut it off, because he doesn't square the ball well, even though he's a natural left footer as good as Porro can. So there are problems with Jed Spence's game, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how he's being used as Frank, because what you're going to need him for is to make sure that you have a good defender on the right side, whichever team has taken advantage of Porro. But the manager has the solution, at least an attempt at the solution, which he has not used. And that is where I have a problem with Frank. And as I go through and I start looking at the things that, is going to start piling up. And as it piles up, then I was like, okay, maybe it's just time that I give up my support for him, because I don't see his football and what he's known for coming through. He has the solution right there for Porro, Jed Spence, the left fullback position. Udogie is unreliable. Ben Davis, Van de Ven. Choose anyone. You have Danzo and Dragoshin, who can play as central defender. So you go ahead and you use those that are available to solve your problem. He's solving problem in 2 places at the same time. That's available to him, and he has not used it yet. He continued to either sit Spence and play Porro. So that is why I said at the beginning or somewhere in the conversation, does it mean that if Udogie is healthy, then you would have played Spence as the right fullback? It's not looking that way to me, because if you have this kind of solution, that I'm beating the point over and over and over again, but I hope you get it. That for me is a manager using his head to do what needs to get done. I've been going for an hour. The broadcast is somewhat choppy. I have to look at from my software, from what I'm doing, everything is flowing here, but I'm not sure it is syncing with the broadcast to YouTube. And so I'm going to go back and review the video, take a look at it, and then try to solve it, because I want to do more, not talk as much as I talk here, because there are a lot of stuff that I have to do. And maybe I'll go for another 5 minutes. 5 minutes with this, because I want to make this point, and probably I'll bring it up again and bring it as a topic. I think I think we are talking past a certain generation of Spurs fans. And I'll say this, and I hope someone catch on to this. As a matter of fact, whatever I'm going to say here, I might clip it and put it out there as a separate piece of the video. As a matter of fact, I'm going to record it on this side. Let me record this so I can put it out as a separate um stream. So I think we're talking past a certain generation. This generation, we are talking about Tottenham Hotspurs as though it belonged to us, our older heads, our um um older fans. We take a conversation, and rather than engaging in where we are today, we spend a lot of time going back to the Harry Redknapp. Some of our fans have never witnessed a game with Harry Redknapp on the sidelines, Martin Joel, and all who came before Pochettino. A lot of our fans, which is a good thing when your fan base is growing by the generation. And so I find that as streamers, as YouTubers, as pundits, we tend to talk past them. We tend to talk past them in the sense that we're not listening to what they're saying, because we think they don't know the club. And that is sad. The reason why I say that, Daniel Levy is all that a certain generation know. Being there for 2 decades and a half is a lot of time to be seeing one person. That's an entire generation all by itself. That's all they know. And so when they talk from that perspective, we have to stop knocking them down as being woke and not understanding where the club is coming from. We have to start understanding that we are a generation that saw certain things, and they will never be able to capture that we do. We span generations. And so we're not supposed to do, right, apart from educating the younger fans, this generation, we can't try to bully them into thinking the way we think and the way we saw football. What I'm seeing as football right now with VAR, right, and the propensity of how cards and the game is officiated, and how we treat a game. If for us it's a win or a lose, it depends on what happened. All hell break loose when we lost a game. There's no in between, right? And so when you have that, and the younger generations are looking at that, and the only thing that matters to them is whether or not your team is going to win. And so you have to give that to them. And the reason why I'm saying this, right, is we have gone 17 years before we actually won a trophy. And that is a couple of years outside of the reign of Daniel Levy. So in other words, there's a generation that has never seen us celebrated any trophy, and we're talking past them. So when they're saying what they're saying, these are a generation that is on Xbox and Madden, and FIFA, and they see the game through that. And that's how they learn the game. Some of the players that they come to know, they're not going to go back and learn anything about them rather than what they know on FIFA. We are fortunate enough to have seen them and when they were good. Half the fan base right now don't know who Martin Shivers is, don't know who Ozzy Ardiles is. You know who they know? Pochettino. And what will happen with another set of fan base is that Ange is all they're going to know. Ange is the one who made them feel good. The generation that we're in, we're talking past them as older fans, and we have to respect their thinking. We can't bully them into thinking the way we want to think and see football, see the club, and understand the club the way we do. We have seen the Graham Roberts. We have seen so much. A lot of the fans, if you want to look at it, don't even know the Gareth Bales and the Modric and the Dembeles. A lot of our fans don't go that far back. We're talking about Perryman and the Guard Crooks and the Ricky Villas. That's how we're talking to this generation. They don't want to hear it. And rightfully so. We have to be able to be flexible. We should be like parents, understanding that you have 5 kids and all 5 kids are not alike, and you have to treat them with love, knowing that, love them all, but knowing that they're all different. And they're going to see things and see the world different. The club is no different. And so when we start to browbeat the fans, this generation, and call them all kinds of names, retarded and woke and dumb and shit, because they don't know what winning is. It's obvious. When reality sets in, this generation of fans have no idea what winning really is, because we have not won anything. So this is all they know. So when Ange comes along and makes them feel good, give that to them. I am not one who wanted Ange beyond what he is, but I can rethink and realize why there are fans out there who will adore Ange. I will understand the reason why you will see in your chat and on mine, they're going to say, we just fire a winning manager and we went in and we get a manager who doesn't know what he's doing. You have to give that to them, because that is all that they know. Ange, it's the first time they're tasting and seeing winnings. So it doesn't matter where we finished in the league. It does not matter to them at all, because they have not seen since they were born, since they started to support the club. It's their parents who are telling them what success was like as a Spurs fan. They have not seen it in 20 years. The generation is different. If you're 40 years old, chances are, how many times would you have as an adult saw us lift something? The last time we won the Europa, it was 41 years ago. The last time we won the Carabao Cup, it was 17 years prior. The last time we make a charge towards the Premier League, it was 9 years ago. There are fans over that period of time who are just becoming Spurs fans, and therefore they might not have seen the days when we were badass in terms of, the FA Cup. That everybody was looking at Spurs. I tell you something real fast. When I was growing up and I started to root for Spurs, I thought the FA Cup was the biggest thing in England. No kidding. I'm just keeping it real. I grew up in Jamaica. I'm a Jamaican, right? And the way Spurs used to perform in those FA Cups, I didn't even know that the Premier League existed. I know it existed, but in terms of we're going to win it, we were never a conversation in those days of winning the Premier League. But we were darn good at the FA Cup and the old League Cup. And so every team knew that no matter where Spurs were in the table, they were going to be a force when it comes to the cup. And that is why we are labeled as a cup club. And what I'm saying is that a lot of our fans, this generation, have not tasted that. We have been knocked out in the third round and the fourth round so often. So they have not seen it. They have not seen us gone on a charge. When was the last time we made it to the finals? Josie was here. So those fans that came in and saw Ange, we made it to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. So that's all they know. And a lot of us are talking past those fans. You have to give that to them. Allow them to breathe. Allow them to celebrate the club the way they want to celebrate the club. Don't try to be the arbiter of our young generation. We're not going to be here forever. What we want to do is hope that we win something before we all exit this earth. But at the same time, you cannot poison the mind of the young generation. If they want to celebrate Ange, let them celebrate Ange, because you know what? Ange is the only winner that they have seen. Forget that he lost 22 games. Forget that we finished 17. Our take on that is we are supposed to be competing in the Premier League. We are supposed to be playing Champions League. I will tell you this, that half of this generation and half the people or more are just about all those who support Ange. Excuse my French, do not give a fuck that we lost 22 games. They do not give a fuck that we finished 17. They knew that Ange made us a winner. Forget about whether or not it was watered down or all the things. He did what every manager was trying to do 17 years ago, was to win us something. We have gone for serial winners. We have gone for let's give this a try in Nuno. We have gone down that route, irrespective of what happened in between that. We have tried it, and it did not work. But Ange, for all his fault, worked, and that is what the fans are looking at. That is what they see. So I can recalibrate on my take on Ange. I wanted Ange out because I was looking at the same thing that most of us thought we should be looking at, is that the Premier League position is most important. It is important to me. It's important to you, the casual fan, and the ones that just came in and were rooting for Ange. I don't think they take that position. Do you want them to be permanent fans, or do you want them to be followers of the next manager? Be a cult leader, or you want to make them fans? And so when you look at a lot of the streams and you see someone would make the comment that, look at what we have. We fired Ange. And one of us are going to turn around and said, but we finished 17th and we lost 22 games. And they're finally going to turn around and said, who give a fuck? I couldn't give a rat's ass. I'm here to see my club, which I want to root for and continue to root for as long as you all have been rooting for it, win something. And the worst of it is that we finished 17th. We were not relegated. There is a legitimate conversation to say that, what if? We had to look at it that way. in their eyes, through their eyes, to say, yes, this is all the things that happened, but at the end of the day, he accomplished something that a lot of managers have not accomplished. How about we look at it through their lens? We are talking past this generation because we think we own the club, and however we see the club, we want those fans to see the club the same way we see the club. We have to get past that. We have to stop talking down to the fans. We have to stop talking down to the supporters because they don't agree with us. They don't agree with us because they are not aligned with our thinking. We are some old farts looking at Huddle and Waddle and Gascoigne. They don't know them. As bad as all the beer is, you find a couple of fans who are saying, give him a chance. Because that's what they saw on their TV. They don't care about the soul of everything else that we do as a club. And so we need to stop talking past them. We need to stop making them feel like they're idiots when they express themselves. Let us not try to be the arbiter of how fans should or should not enjoy the club. You go out and root as hell for the club. Complain as much as you want, but don't tell someone else that they cannot complain, especially when they don't agree with you or they're not aligned with what you're trying to sell. This conversation as it is should never ever be about Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy is gone, and he left us with a magnificent stadium. See it there in the background. But he also left us with a football team that is not very good or befitting of the structure. How do we rectify that? Talking down to the fans or trying to tell the fan that they support mediocrity every single time they try to make a point. Or let's talk about this in the context of this. No, listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they feel, because football is about emotions. They got a winner. And if you get a winner, you're going to want to be associated with winner. Like I said before, they do not care. They do not care, excuse me, that we finished 17th. We're talking down to them. They do not care that we lost 17 games. There's a reason why. We are more concerned that the team was not good enough to win the Europa and finish 5th. It doesn't matter. The objective, as it was to do something that is going to get you into the upper echelon of football. And if you win the Europa and you struggle and you make it to the Champions League, at the end of the day, logics will say that should be all that matters. And what we should have done is the backroom should have now piggyback on that and make us an attractive destination. But overall, like I said earlier in the broadcast, we are not an attractive destination. So even the Champions League, and I hear people say this, we're in the Champions League, just go out there and sign some players. It doesn't work like that. But at the same time, right, we still have to understand that how I feel and how this present generation feels about doing that. We can't shout them down all the time. Even though I will say, for a today fan who is going to look at it, and it's not just them, it's across the board. If I objectively, I think, will say, I think Conor Gallagher will help us, right? And a fan who just came on hate Chelsea for whatever, because all his kids, the kids at school hate Chelsea. They don't want to have anything to do with Chelsea because they live pretty close, and everybody are Chelsea fans, and they just don't want to have anything to do with Chelsea. So therefore they will not support Conor Gallagher. You have to give that to them. There is nothing that is etched in stone or reality that we must go out and sign Conor Gallagher, but it's a conversation. And allow them to have a conversation. That is how you know the passion that they have. And then you're saying, hey, I don't want to look at a Conor Gallagher, and when I look at him, he reminds me of Chelsea. Give them that. Don't belittle the fans because they don't share your idea. I think Conor Gallagher would be a wonderful player for us. I think he will help Javis Simons tremendously with the way he plays. And like I said, the 19-year-old who probably don't know the history just heard someone said we don't do business with Chelsea, and I heard he used to play for Chelsea. Maybe not even sure. I don't want him. He's past Chelsea. He's at Atletico Madrid. What are we going to say? We don't want any player that play for Atletico Madrid? So there's a lot of ways to look at this whole thing. But the main thing that I'm trying to get from this point is that as a group and a subset of people, in terms of YouTube and what we do every day, we need to not accept but be tolerant of this generation of fans. If we're going to broadcast to all fans and our conversation takes us to, well, do you remember when we had Shivers? That can't be it. That absolutely cannot be it. Just the way Frank losing a game, the conversation switches to, well, Pochettino. Well, Pochettino had a darn good team. Even though at the time, we were still cursing at Daniel Levy. And incidentally, right, we waxed on about Son and Kane and all those players, and Dembele and Eriksson and Ali and Rose and the two guys at the back and Hugo Lloris. We waxed on and said they're all legends, right? We do that all the time. I think we had some doozies, yes. The NGIs, like I see someone put in there to make a point, right? Half our fan base don't even know who Nkudu is. And we talk about, Tangai and the Los Celsos, right? But we forget the players that we're waxing on and on about. The Townsends, right? We forget them. We forget that we wax on and on about Dembele and Adebayor. We forget that. We forget about the good players that we keep waxing on about, but then we make a lump sum statement that Daniel Levy never signed any good players. Make that make sense? And so when we keep going back into the conversation, we at one point was saying the same thing that we're saying today. We were saying that, yes, we have a manager, but we don't have a team. The same players who overlap for maybe a 2 to 3 years period leading into the Champions League, chasing down Leicester. We had those players at some point playing together. Darn good team. And when we want to use that to flag Thomas Frank, saying that these players are not good enough, we said the same thing when Pochettino was here. When he had the Ryan Masons and the Bentalebs and the Harry Winks and Young Skip and refused to sign players. We chase Jensen out of town because he was not Harry Kane. We chase Vinicius Jr. out of town because he was not Harry Kane. We chase away Bergwijn because he was not Harry Kane. We slag off on those players because they were not Hurricane or Sun. We're doing the same thing today. And now we're saying, let's go back and be like those teams. Fans in chat rooms. I've been in this a long time. We're saying, let's be where we are right now to teach Daniel Levy a lesson. Let's drop out of the top 4 because all Daniel Levy wants to do is pack his wallet, is to be paid. He's just all about making the money. Fans were saying that when Pochettino was keeping us in the top 4, that Daniel Levy has no ambition. The club has no ambition because all we're making is top 4. You know, every club, 19 other clubs want to be in the top 4. But Spurs fans today and the day before think we were an embarrassment to be in the top 4. Some fans go as far as say, "Oh, let us get relegated and teach Daniel Levy a lesson." I don't want to be relegated to teach Daniel Levy a lesson. Fans were saying that the same thing they're saying today. They said that. And lo and behold, that's where we are now. We're fighting with the alsos of the Premier League. And we forget that when we were doing well, right? I understand that we didn't get all the players that we want, that we needed to kick on. Aaron Lennon said that I did a video with Aaron Lennon saying that we were missing maybe about 3 to 4 players, which everyone knew that. But that did not stop the fans then from saying, no, we need to drop out of the top 4 to teach Daniel Levy a lesson. Who said that about their club? Well, I have news for you. We are neither good, half good, or anywhere near the top 4. How is that working out for you? Because that's what we wanted for our club, to teach Daniel Levy a lesson. Let me say this and I'm finished. The manager, the owners, everything that you see at a club will eventually change hands. They will change hands. And that is why it's important that we as fans go through what we're going through together, understanding that it's a generational thing. And we have to stop talking past this generation, because the only thing that's permanent to any club are the fans. If we get relegated tomorrow, I'm not going to burn my apparels, my merch. I'm going to wear it with pride, because first and foremost, as a fan, I am behind the crest. That is the most important thing to me. It's not whether or not we finish as a top 4, or when we do, that's the only time I'm going to celebrate the club. It doesn't matter where we are, whether we're struggling or not. I will always be a Tottnam Hotspur fans. And that is what and that is why I'm saying to us as senior fans, older fans, don't talk past the generation. Listen to what they have to say, because one day they are going to be in the same positions that we are talking about this generation. They will be talking about this generation, and they will remember that we never supported them, because we want to talk so much about the glory days, their glory days, right? And the suffering that they have to is not 42 years ago. It's not 17 years ago. It is 23, 24, 25 with Ange Postecoglou for a lot of fans. That is where their suffering starts. That is where their glory is. And that's what they're going to take forward. So let's just stop calling them idiots. Let's just understand that as fans, we are fans, and we should always honor and respect the badge, and more so, as divided as we are, as vicious as we are in terms of our disagreement, we should never ever get to the point of hate, of being vitriolic, disrespectful, denigrating each other. We should not get to the point where we can have a dialogue because we are invoking and bringing in someone else's family member and saying mean and nasty things. And if we continue to call this generation, the people who celebrates Ange, even today, who are celebrating him, if we continue to call them idiots and try to chase them away from the club, that's the only celebration, that's the only time they have seen Spurs in their lifetime or their young lifetime as a Spurs fan lift a trophy. We are grateful to be here to witness what happened before. So let's not get over our skis here and have some respect for the young fans. Let them celebrate like crazy. Let's celebrate Brennan Johnson as though he was the best thing that ever happened to us, because he's no longer here, but he did enough with his limited skill. We can't just say Brennan Johnson and we're like, oh, he's dog shit. That's our language. That's how we treat our players. No, he's a Spurs fan until, or Spurs player until he's not. And whatever else he has, whatever skill he's lack, take that. We should talk about Brennan Johnson as a winner for someone with limited talent. It's not his fault. Gyökeres was never going to come to Spurs. Arsenal is a big team. He can't cut it there. Hasn't cut it there. Šeško hasn't cut it. And before him, and before him, and before him, top team signed players who would never dream or think of coming to Spurs. So let's respect the ones who we go out and we get. I'm not saying that we should go out and sign 19-year-old Souza to solve our problem, because we have done that already and it has not worked with Archie Gray and Bergvall and Sarr and Udogi. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when they come, we have to open our arms and welcome them. And if our players, our youngsters, see them as their idol, who am I and who are you to tell them not to? I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, they're generational and they're this and that. Let the youngsters do what and say what they want to. We don't have to come here on social media, on our stream and every day and belittle them because they might not agree with you that Odebeer is not a good player. Leave them alone. Sooner or later, Odebeer is going to go. But if they want to enjoy what they think they're seeing from Odebeer or Tell, leave them alone. We're talking past them. So we're supposed to be able to have this dialogue as fans. I know I'm just getting to this rant, but at the end of the day, what it should be is that we're Spurs fans. And we're going to have fragments of the club. Like, for example, we can talk about football with my generation, because my generation is busy talking about Daniel Levy. My generation is busy talking about Martin Joel and Harry Redknapp and when we were good, right? And Garrett Bale. And before Garrett Bale, we're Hoddle and Waddle and you know, all of that stuff, and Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa and Shivers. We're busy talking about that because we get nostalgic about that. Our young fans does not feel what we're feeling, so leave them alone. What they're going to feel is the Mo Kudus and the Javi Simons. He might have done nothing, and everyone will be talking about that turn that he did, run up in the wall, turn, and it was out of there. That was some play, and that will etch into a fan's mind. That's what they're enjoying. Leave them alone. But we want to take that and say Javi Simons is no good. And the reason why he's no good is because the board is no good and Enoch is no good and Daniel Levy and Paratici and everything else. Instead of just let them enjoy what they have just seen. We lost. And so therefore, it amounts to nothing at the end of the day for us because we wanted to win. But maybe a segment of the fan base doesn't look at football that way. Leave them alone. Let them enjoy the football the way they want to. Stop talking down to this generation of fans. Let them be. I can tell you, I still have scars in my 60s from what would have called just a regular tackle. I brushed it, pull my socks up, and we're gone again. You do that, and in this day and age, and you get a red card, and from a still picture, because you step on somebody's toe. Nasty. Get him out of here. With plastic boots with iron studs. When we used to wear iron studs, it was because it rained. Everything else back in the day was rubber, so you were never in danger. But today, you look, everyone is wearing iron studs. And what do you think is going to happen with these thin plastic? No one wear shin guards anymore. When I used to put my shin guards on, it goes from my ankle all the way up to my shin, actually. I wasn't a high socks guy. But my shin guard came all the way up to my calves. Back in the day, I know there was a guy, I don't wanna lie, but you know what he used to do? He used to actually wear 2 shin guards. He actually has 4 shin guards on, one to the back and one to the front, because he knows the tackles are coming. We can't even mistime a tackle in football today. VAR under review. That's where we are. That's what we need to be upset about. Not fans enjoying Ange Postecoglou. We should be more concerned about where the football is going, with the game being refereed again and again on monitors. That's what we should be worried about. It's a contact sport. And it's an emotional sport. And if fans want to get emotional over someone they see as a winner, let them be. We should not try to be the arbiter of how fans should enjoy their club. And I'm going to leave it right there because I'm getting all worked up. So I hope I'm watching the stream, and I thank you and I appreciate those who stop by. Just by the title itself, it's what it is. I want to contribute to the community, but I want to talk about topics that is not, the everyday berating and belittling, our fans. I want to talk about tactics. I want to talk about players' skill, the game itself. I want to talk about that. Incidentally, for some, we lost a game that we played out for our minds in the second half. And that is because we just don't have a good squad. Is that we just don't have leadership. We just don't have that currently. And so if you're like me who accepts that, it's not accepting mediocrity. It's accepting that right now, as we are composed, as we are set up with the injuries and everything, good to see Solanke back. I think he will add a little bit more to the front line. I think we get into these conversations where Solanke is back, and the first thing, someone's gonna say, "I don't rate him." You know what I'm saying? This is who we are. You know, it doesn't matter if I rate him or you rate him. What you're having is you're having a striker. He is a striker. He might not be the striker that you want. He might not be, the everything. He might be a one-hit wonder. But what we're gonna have is a proper striker. I look at his return from that position because now what you do is that you can now say, let me pick my 11. And when it comes to the striker position, say, okay, Solanke is going to be that striker. Who's going to be my number 10? Javi Simmons. I mean, all being available, whether, like next week, we're coming up, you look down the line, and they said, let's pick a team. If we can't agree, 95, 98% of us with the manager, we are going to have problems. Not the good problems that teams that are overloaded with a lot of talent has. But if we can't just, as two fans, you and I, just sit down and say, hey, between me and you, let's pick a starting 11 and see where we differs. And I'm going to say, hey, right now for what it is, say that Udogie is still not healthy, or say Udogie is healthy. Let's use a healthy Udogie. I'm going to go straight to Udogie as my left fullback. As bad as Vicario is, there is no other option but to start Vicario. And so we begin to have agreements in how we dissect the players that are available. We know that Van der Ven, Healthy, and Ramiro are going to play. Whether or not we want to talk about if Ramiro is a world-class player, we're not getting into that conversation. And the reason why is because we don't know and understand football, so we look at the extracurricular stuff to talk about and describe a player, to have an argument or have a conversation. That has no room to talk about whether or not Ramiro is a world-class player. The only thing that should matter is that he is the best defender right now of the lot that's there. Even if he's not the best defender or the one who is going to split the base, right? In picking the team, the first thing you're going to look at is the captain. So there's some things that you look at. I would probably say, hey, why not go with Danza, because Danza plays well every time he plays. My goodness, he is supposed to. That is why you have players behind players. We don't seem to get that. Losing team don't get that. We want to start the backup because our starter faltered. But let me just go through the point I'm making. We're going to look out there and we see the squad, a healthy squad. And the first thing we're going to look at is that we're going to say, let's go with Vicario. We can have our take on him, but obviously he's going to be the best of the lot. A fit Udogie is going to start. Van der Ven is going to start alongside Ramiro. And then we have the conversation and we break it down whether or not it is Spence in natural position over Porro. And I think we're going to split it down the line or agree right away that Spence is a better defender and therefore he should start. Just like that. And there you have your back line, right? And then we get to the midfield. And even if Benton Kerr was healthy, you pencil in Palinia. That should be a no-brainer. We shouldn't be having a conversation about whether or not Palinia advanced the ball. He's not here for that. That's not his job. His job is what you see him doing and occasionally pop one in the back of the net. That's what he's here for. Tackle the ball. Get the ball, win the ball back. And so when we start there, which I think we should be playing a 4-1, 3-1. That's how I would play with the kind of team that we have, the weakness that we have in the team. We could argue that part, right? But let's say we're going to give Frank his preferred selection. We're going to get stuck because, football is going to dictate how we deal with everything. And so when we get to Palinia, going up the line, we're stuck. Why are we stuck? Because we don't have another number 6 or a number 8 that is clear cut. This is not about liking a player. This is about looking at the team as it's constructed and say that guy fits right there. And it leads back to when I was talking about Conor Gallagher. If we have Conor Gallagher, there is absolutely no doubt that Conor Gallagher is going to get penciling right next to Palhinha. So we're going to have a long conversation because right now, as I'm talking to you, I don't know if I can trust Bergvall there. We're talking healthy bodies. I don't think we can trust Gray there. I don't think we can trust Sarr there. Talking about healthy body and someone coming back in the 4. This is going to split the base and Benton Kerr. And I will be the one who becomes controversial in everything and said, you know who I'd put there? I would put Bissouma right next to Palhinha. Because of all the players that are there. You see how you develop a football conversation and you have a conversation. Bissouma possess all the things. I'm not saying he's doing it. I'm not saying that he's not a bonehead. I'm just saying that when you look at it from a pure football standpoint, Bissouma is the one who's supposed to be playing next to Palhinha. That would make this team better. We're talking about a squad of players that we have. And so even now, as you start to look at the injuries and look at the performances of Gray and Bergvall and Sarr, and you have a healthy, crazy as he is in the head, Bissouma, who would fit the bill right next to Palhinha? And it should be a no-brainer that Bissouma should go right next to Palhinha. And we can well, no-brainer for me, but that's a conversation. So we start to pull back from the 100%. So this is where we're going to disagree that, you know, Bissouma do all he does and whatever it is, and that's going to be a factor as to whether or not Frank is going to look past that and put a Bissouma who would serve and tick the boxes as a box-to-box midfielder on his day. We don't want players who are good on their days. We want players who are good all the time. That should be the objective, don't get me wrong. But in this case, you take a Bissouma and you put Bissouma next to Palhinha, and the complexion of a team begins to look different. There's not going to be an argument, right? That when you move to the number 10 position, it is going to be Javi Simons. We're not even supposed to, disagree there. Those are the slots that you pencil in, and you said next. We look at it. So as you go up the line and you said, hey, a fit Solanke is back, so I could throw him in the mix now. There's no doubt who you're going to pencil in there as a starter. It is going to be Solanke. And then we worry about the 2 wings because now we have players who are out. Then it becomes a conversation of who do we put left and who do we put right? And we're going to say, well, I would prefer to see Odebeer on the left or on the right and tell. So we have 2 positions now that are up in the air. And pretty much based on what we have as healthy players, they're going to pick themselves. Is whether or not you put Odebeer left or you put Odebeer right. And right now as I'm speaking, right, apart from Bissouma, right, I can almost guarantee you that if this team is fit going into the next game, you are going to see that exact team out there. I expect Frank to be thinking the way I'm thinking. And that's the way the entire fan base is supposed to be thinking. That we as a fan base can look at the players that are available and agree with 98% or high 90s of the players that are going to be in the starting lineup. Now that would be Frank's turn. How is he going to make the tactical adjustment for these players to work? But when you look across the positions that need to be filled and be in the first 11, those are the players that you look in the squad. We're not talking about, the quality. We're talking about availability and for what they bring, because we know what their qualities are. We know that if we look at it and we say we are supposed to be a top team playing in the Champions League, these players, half of them and more, are not up to standard for where we're competing. We should all agree on that. But when you look at it, finding solution within the squad, you should be able to roll that 11 out there. And if you poll 10 of us, 8 of us are supposed to come up with that lineup without hesitation. And when we're doing that, when we're able to do that, then we know we have an 11. Then we know we're building a team. And if we can't do that, if we're picking a striker and we're talking about Harry Kane, then there's a disconnect. If we're picking a winger and we're talking about Aaron Lennon to make a point, then there's a disconnect. And what I'm saying before in talking past our generation here is that they don't know them. And therefore, if you're going to try to tell them that, oh, let's compare them to everybody else, there's a reason why they're at Spurs, because they can't be at any other club in the top 6, because they were never good enough when we were recruiting them. They were never going to fill the quality, the requirement for those clubs. So time we get off of who will make what team. I hear it all the time. Well, let me see if Van de Ven will make Arsenal's team. Right now, with what Arsenal has, it will be long stretch to make that, because Saliba and Gabriel is playing out their minds. So we can just eliminate a conversation like that, because it's fruitless in talking about Spurs, because we want to compare and contrast rather than looking at what we have as a club. Can we grow with those players? Are we going to be better than 10 other clubs with that lineup on the day? Yes. And that is how we need to look at it. That we can roll 8 or 9 players out there on a consistent basis that is going to represent where we should be in the league. That when we played the likes of Brentford and Brighton and Bournemouth and Fulham, we don't look like we're fighting relegation on the Palaces, because we're supposed to have higher caliber players in the recruit than they are. Period. Anyway, I think this didn't do too bad. I think I have to look back at it to see if the latency and the streaming and the breaking up, all of that stuff, how it work. I'll split the stream into the last part as I promised, because I wanted to make sure that the point, and I'm going to label it, the point of talking past this generation is part of the topic that I wanted to discuss.